Welcome to Charmed Life, a radio show discussing spirituality, magic, and the unconditional love of the universe. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm your host, Tricia Carr. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I am so excited to connect with you. First of all, I have to say, if you didn't hear the last episode, I really encourage you to go and listen to it, and then maybe even listen to it again. I had on Barbara Goldsmith, who is an astrologer and a channel, and she channeled the Pleiadians, and it was so fun. I have certain episodes where I just get tons and tons of feedback and tons of response on. And, you know, you guys are always so awesome about the episodes anyway. And it seems like some just kind of elicit a really extroverted kind of response. Some other ones I will just get a more of an introverted, like kind of interpersonal kind of response. I can feel it from you, or maybe the comments are a little bit more from the quietness of your soul, all of those who connect with this program. But the Barbara Goldsmith one was very extroverted, and I think just her energy is so uplifting. So go back and listen to it. It was amazing, or watch it on YouTube. So to remind you all that if you listen to this as a podcast, you can always also watch it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Tricia Carr, and I post other videos up there. And you know what, guys, I have to tell you, I have a few things coming up with this particular, I have some things coming up. Let me tell you, on the YouTube channel, I'm going to be adding a segment about animals, but particularly about cats. And so keep an eye out for that on my YouTube channel. And what I'm going to do is start a separate podcast for it, for the audio version. But you can find everything that I do there on the YouTube channel. I also am now on Insight Timer, so I have meditations up there. I have some meditations on my YouTube channel as well. But if you want to find me on Insight Timer and follow me, that would be awesome. I really like Insight Timer. There's actually a nice little community feeling there, and there's all kinds of resources. So go find me there if you will. So along the lines of telling you about what episode I just had, I thought I would also share with you what's coming up, because I have a really cool roster coming up. So the next episode after this one is a person who, her name is Michelle. I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I've asked her. I think it's Vezli, Vezli. I know her really well. She is an artist, she's a singer, and she is a channel, and she's just amazing. So she actually channels her music, and I'm really excited to connect with her on all of the work that she has going on. And then the week after that, we have Indra Singh on the show. She is amazing. She actually channels flowers and creates essences from the flowers. And then the week after that, which if you listen to it live will be June 2nd of 2019, Colin Bedell, who is an astrologer. Oh my gosh, he is so much fun. I just enjoy his videos. I see them on Facebook. I think he probably maybe puts them on YouTube as well. He probably has it on Instagram. I see him on Facebook. So good, so intelligent, but so entertaining at the same time. Really makes what I think is complex about astrology really digestible and easy to feel and understand. And what else is really cool about that June 2nd episode is that I'm going to have a couple of friends come in studio with me. A couple of my friends from other states are coming into town. They're my colleagues and my friends, one named Lauren Olivia, one named Chris Hoffman, and they're coming into town to have a little party with me, to play with me. So they'll be in studio with me, and they're also going to be here to celebrate the sort of grand opening of my studio, my Mystic Arts Academy that I talk about every now and again. I will be having on the first, the third in a series of workshops of journeying with your multidimensional guides. So if you are, again, listening live, the next one of these, a second in this series, is this coming Saturday. So go check it out. The link to check it out is in whatever the description, however you're watching or listening to this. But you can also just go to my website, triciacarcharm.com, go to Mystic Arts Academy. You'll be able to see all of the offerings that I have, the ones that are live classes, like the multidimensional guides class, and as well as the intuitive and mediumship development class we have twice per month, and then other things that I have on demand. So go check that out. I would love to have you guys. You can join any of my programs online or in person. And it's going to be so much fun on the 1st and the 2nd. So I will see you guys there. And what else? Well, that's about it on the updates. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. It is Mother's Day as we live broadcast this. And so I'm here just to spend time with you, just us. I'm excited for the guests that I have coming up, but I also love spending time in the shows that I do just one-on-one, just solo with you guys. And so today I wanted to talk about the mother of all manifestation. And that may sound like I'm going to kind of pin it down to one particular source or one particular energy. And I guess in a way we will get there. But there's all kinds of energies that would be that mothering kind of source that actually impacts your manifestation. And so let's get right into it. First of all, let me tell you that I am actually in training. I'm going to college to become a clinical hypnotherapist. 2 or 3 episodes back, I had on a lovely, gorgeous person named Desi Ivanova, and she's a clinical hypnotherapist, and she inspired me to get deep into the study so that I'm actually going to be certified in about 6 months. My whole program will be longer than that, but I'm really excited about that because it's just deepening how I work as a meditation teacher and as someone who helps people to shift their reality by working with their energy and their vibration and by working with the universal laws. And in my hypnotherapy program, Desi actually mentioned this as well. One of the key tools that I'm finding really useful, a particular perspective about how we develop. And so what we know is that the way that we actually we develop a certain characteristic of suggestibility. So suggestibility is a term that is used in hypnotherapy, and that means your ability to be able to go into hypnosis. But it actually speaks to more than that. Your suggestibility is actually how you learn, and then subsequent to that, how you would express yourself or how you communicate. So let me just explain why I'm talking about this to start off this discussion about the mother of all manifestation, or the mother role. So between the ages of 0 and up to the age of about 6 or 8 years old, that is when we form the kind of general way that we are suggestible, or the way that we learn. And a big part of that is actually the relationship we have with our primary caregiver. So in the first couple of years, when we're just sort of, figuring out how to form some kind of personality, up to about age 2 is when we start to really speak, and so we're starting to express ourselves. That first little bit there, we're kind of all very similar. We're just these sponges, right? But of course, the relationship with your primary caregiver is the one that you are responding to the most, that is shaping you because you're responding to it. So as I say primary caregiver, for most of us, that is the mother. And that is simply because the child actually comes from the body of the mother. And of course, there are many exceptions to that. It could be a father, it could be a sister, it could be a nanny. But for the sake of this conversation, we can just kind of think of it at least as the role of the mother, the primary caregiver. And again, for most of us, that is just literally our physical mother, or maybe our adoptive mother. And so, as I say, how we learn, we can also see if how we learn or how we receive suggestion, that is another way to say how we magnetize to ourselves. How we actually receive, right? To magnet something to yourself. And then what we do with that information and how we actually process it will be how the converse side of that is how we express ourselves. And so that would be the electric energy. So this points us all to how we set up our electromagnetic field, which is another way that we say aura, or the energy that we vibrate from our being. So in the hypnotherapy training, there are 2 kind of basic ways that we categorize suggestibility. One is physical and one is emotional. And then there are a couple of subsets of that. One, a somnambulist, and another one is called the intellectual. And none are better than the other, but essentially the physical suggestible is one who receives information directly from the physical and then processes it in the being in a very literal way. But what's interesting is that way that you actually receive the information, then when you express it, tends to be very metaphorical and a more expressive kind of metaphorical speech. To sum it up, the physical suggestible, or the one who learns in that manner, is more of the right brain dominant person. Right brain being the intuitive and creative kind of mind. And then on the other side, we have the emotional suggestible, or the person who learns by more creative or metaphorical, more inferred information rather than literal. Then they process it and they tend to express it literally. And so that would be a person who is more left brain dominant or more analytical, more linear in the way that they are kind of showing up or behaving in the world. So again, what I'm drawing out here for you is that from ages 0 to 6, the relationship we tend to have with our mother, or the mother role, is what shapes us to be more dominantly right-brained or left-brained. And of course, there are people who are more, like I say, what we call in hypnotherapy, somnambulists, or people that are just kind of more 50-50. And so there isn't one that is more dominant than the other necessarily. And nobody is 100% right-brained or 100% left-brained. And so you could be anywhere on this kind of scale. Me personally, I am actually 82% of that right brain, or 82% of that physical that will bring the information in literally and then express it sort of metaphorically. And so you could see right away that the role of mother kind of sets me from the age 0 to about 6 or 8, sets you up for a kind of very strong patterning for the rest of your life. And it really doesn't change. It doesn't change after that. And there are a lot of other observations, a lot of different modalities, psychology and science, and how the brain actually is formed that shows us those critical years as well. A lot of things get set up. And even in some faiths, some different spiritual or religion, spiritual belief systems or faiths would say that somewhere around that age is the age of understanding, meaning that the person actually becomes responsible for their sins. I think it's standard. Kurt, are you Catholic by any chance? No. You don't have any Catholicism in your background?
Funny enough, my whole family's Catholic, and they thought they were taking me to a Catholic private school, and it was actually Lutheran, so I was raised Lutheran. So that's how that went.
That's awesome. Yeah. Good research.
So yes, the Catholic is all over my family, except for me.
It's hilarious. I love that. I really like Lutheranism. There's a lot of beauty in that particular religion and the way that they hold their service. I've always had an affinity for it.
I was married in a Lutheran church too, so.
Oh, really? Yeah. My high school boyfriend's family was Lutheran, so actually in high school I went to a lot of Lutheran services, and I really appreciated it. Yeah, really beautiful.
I love it. But
yeah. Well, anyway, in Catholicism, as I understand that catechism, the time that they actually do the confirmation, I believe that's around age 8. That's kind of the typical time that they sort of do that transfer of ownership to the child, the age of understanding. And so I'm bringing all of this up, not to say that obviously religion or anything is absolutely right. There are parallels to this that, if it's come by the means of religion or just spiritual seeking, that's not scientific, and yet it came to a very similar finding as science, right? Did you find something there, Kurt? Is it like age 8?
Oh. I'm trying to look.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to.
I'll find it.
Kurt's always like taking what I say and like trying to make it valid or correct it, which I appreciate. So this is really powerful, right? The relationship we have with our mother between the ages 0 to 8 or 0 to 6 or something like that sets up a kind of structural way that our field, our electromagnetic field, our aura, tends to function for the rest of your life. But I want to actually take us back a little bit before those ages of 0 to 6. Because here's the thing. When we're standing from that place of eternity where we're actually creating the life, where we're creating the blueprint or the soul vortex, the intentions of the multidimensional consciousness that's going to be manifest into whatever particular planet that you're going to be creating yourself upon. you see that mother that you are creating. You see her on the earth. You see her as the 3D version of herself. And she's also up there. Think of it as up, of course, we always do. But she's also in that soul family, that conversation about creating your blueprint. So it's even before the physical life of 0 to 6 or 8. We call this contracts in mysticism and metaphysics, soul contracts. And so before we actually create the soul or the multidimensional consciousness, which will eventually create the life in the body, we set up contracts. We see what the mother has created in her life on this planet. And of course, that goes back to her mother and her mother and her mother. And more than just the mother. It's just Mother's Day, so I'm looking at that maternal lineage. And this actually will be in play for even the person who, like I say, is going to have an adoptive mother. And all of the mother roles and those primary kind of critical, fundamental relationships. So if you come in through the body of one person, but then you're immediately handed off to someone else as your primary caregiver, both of those people are a part of that blueprint. And it seems that, sure, the ones where you continue to create the energy with them, meaning the one that you have direct contact with in the physical life from ages 0 to 6 or 8, it sort of starts to dominate there. But the seed of whatever contract and whatever influences of the physical mother, that would still be there too. The physical DNA, because the physical DNA is not only physical, it's energetic. And that energy is always, it cannot be destroyed. So it's always a part of what you're creating. And so here's the thing that's really interesting is that when we find ourselves in the position of feeling like we are in some kind of disconnect between what we want to experience in our life and what we are experiencing in our life, we can actually look to the relationship with the mother or some of those contracts, if we want to call them that. In truth, we inherit the beliefs and the issues of our mother. And of course, more than that, of course, of our secondary caregiver or our father, our siblings. Eventually, beyond those ages of 6 and 8, it starts to expand to teachers and peers, and then the secondary caregiver, which in a lot of cases is father. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there isn't a secondary caregiver. And it expands beyond that. But again, looking at those very fundamental years of 0 to 6, it is mostly the relationship with the primary caregiver or the mother. So we inherit her beliefs and her issues. And we intended to, as we created ourselves from that before life perspective. We form those contracts, and it seems as though when we're in the body, when the consciousness is starting to orient to the body, creating the body, and when the mental facility, the mental body, is not developed yet, we're receiving the information literally, because everyone, as I was explaining in the beginning, the kind of suggestible or the kind of learner that we are, whether you're physical or emotional, for those first couple of years, we're all just the physical kind because we just receive things literally. We haven't developed the facility to be able to understand or experience metaphor or inference. So as we're receiving that information literally and not capable of doing anything that can untangle the information, and we're receiving information from a mature person with complex issues, complex beliefs. But we can't unravel that complexity. And so we kind of receive the base vibration of it, and then we just try to respond to it. And there is a kind of, can be like a misinterpretation of it, because we can't really heal those issues yet because we don't have the mental facility to. And as the body and as the personality, or even we might say as the fear-based ego is starting to be created, then it starts to create these layers of confusion. And even, I think, what people think are blocks. But I want to say that they aren't blocks. I really don't like the idea of blocks, because when we think that we have blocks, in our creative process or in our manifestation or whatever it is, we feel the next thing that we say is that we have to remove blocks. And I don't think that is helpful, mainly because if we're talking about that very fundamental part of us, the survival mechanism doesn't believe in removing anything. It's saying that we want to remove something from ourselves is akin to removing members of our person, you know? And I think that even it's not true, in my experience, what we want to do is alchemize. We actually want to take in those limiting beliefs that were created from a misunderstanding about the stimulus to which we were responding. And we want to absorb it even more. The reason that we came into our mother's life, bringing into our own being her issues and her beliefs, some of which may be negative, there's actually a kind of intention to heal it. Healing it in the sense of not like a martyr, but to bring awareness to it and again to alchemize it and transmute it. And so this is something that I actually, excuse me, one second. Oh, goodness. This is something that I discovered in this particular session that I've had. You all, if you listen frequently, you may have heard me or heard on the show a person named Steve Nobel, and he does these sessions called Soul Matrix Healings. And so I had a couple of Soul Matrix Healing sessions with Steve Nobel, and you can find that episode. It was last year sometime. So if you go look in the feed somewhere, you'll be able to find it. He's awesome. And so I had this session with Steve Nobel, and we actually we go deep into the field, into your own field, and we pull out all these different contracts. And one of the contracts that I recognized, it sort of just like struck me in this moment of claircognizance and this aha kind of experience. I realized that I had created a contract, and I really felt that it started when I was a baby. Again, when there's misunderstanding of what you're responding to. As a baby, I shifted what would have been a pre-birth intention to expand and heal and transmute and alchemize all positive things with my mother. And I turned it into wanting to heal her in a sort of martyrdom or a heavy or dense sense of the abuse that she had experienced in her life. And that's a lot of pressure for a baby. And so, you know, as I experienced that, I was like, wow, that's crazy. So there was this one layer that when I recognized that, because there was a nonsense layer, that misinterpretation, just seeing the nonsense of it, how it did not make any sense at all, and it didn't align with anything that humans can do or do, it really took off an important part of it. Just seeing that it was nonsense was healing. I released it. It's no longer a part of me. But there was more to it. There was more to discover there. And so as I just recently went in to see what would be able to free me up to move more in alignment with my soul blueprint, if you want to say it that way, or just the feelings of my joy and excitement, I went in and I got taken back to my mother. And it wasn't like my relationship with my mother as much as it was my mother's relationship with the things in her life, most of which were actually before I was even born. I wear the most of it? Yeah, most of them. There were a couple of situations that sort of overlapped into my having been born, but it was mostly things that happened to her as a child, way before I was born. And it also, you know, and I keep going deep into that rabbit hole. It wasn't how my mother responded to it that was the next step. I had to go deeper. And it was actually finding those people and their unconsciousness that created whatever was the abuse or the bad situation for my mother. And then bring it back and having compassion and being able to just put some sense around it again. As we go into these issues, when we find where there's nonsense, where there's just misinterpretation, release happens immediately. And the key to being able to do this is to be able to see it with objectivity. And how do you do that? Well, you do that by when something feels uncomfortable, honestly. Maybe it's even painful to allow your attention to be upon it. Just stay there for a little bit and recognize that it's not happening to you right now in a physical sense. It's something that's old news. It's something that has already happened, but it isn't happening right now. And so there actually isn't any threat. So there's a little bit of nonsense to undo right there, right? When we have an unconscious fear, we actually our unconscious mind is signaling to us that something is happening right now that literally isn't. Even if that unconscious mind is saying, be careful, don't let this happen again, it's experiencing the vibration of it truly as though it's happening right now. And so going in to look at the different kinds of limiting beliefs or the unconscious fears that we have is only a step forward in healing. Avoiding our own fears that we're just harboring inside, this dark closet that we don't want to open the door of the things that have happened to us or that we've observed in our lives, that's already a state of injury. And then opening that door doesn't re-injure us. It actually frees us from that injury because we recognize when we become objective to it, we recognize it's not literally happening now. And so there's the nonsense. And when we observe something as nonsensical, we are healed from it. Because we recognize, well, that's just not true. There is no boogeyman. There is no physical boogeyman, at least. Only the boogeyman that I create in my mind. And I am more sovereign than the things, than the subjects of my thoughts. Our thoughts are actually subject to us. We create our thoughts. There is an essence of I am that is primary to that is prime. And it is the unconscious kind of shield between you and that I am presence that keeps you under the rule of the thoughts being who you are, or the thoughts being the things that you identify to that keep you captive. Does that make sense? You are unconditional, and your thoughts are the conditions that you create. And so they are subject to you. Right? It's like your car is not the driver. You actually control your car. I just got a new car, so cars are on my mind. So I encourage you to go ahead and look at any of those fears. And, the technique we can use is, what am I afraid of? And you can, if it's about aligning with a relationship or aligning with finances or, a life purpose or lifestyle of some kind, what am I afraid of? And that will bring up the nonsense. And as soon as you see it as nonsense, you are free of it. You'll recognize that it is not your master, you are master of it. And so this actually leads directly into how we become clearer and swifter on our path of manifestation or of creating, getting back to the mother of all manifestation. Well, the true spiritual mother that we all share is the consciousness of the earth, that which we name Gaia, Gaia. So the earth has a soul, has a consciousness. And that soul or that consciousness is actually a very high, let's say, light order, meaning that consciousness or the composition of that beingness of the earth or Gaia is very proximate to the source of all creation, or God, or prime creator. Another way to say this is that Gaia, the energy of Gaia, the signature is very close to that of source energy. And yet another way to say it is that the Gaia being is an archangelic kind of energy in that tier of energies. And so Gaia is, we say, Mother Earth, and the spiritual being of Gaia is literally our mother. And so let me explain to you how that is by explaining to you this term, the crystalline grid, or the crystalline grid, some people say. I tend to say the crystalline grid. I don't know if you've heard of this or not, or maybe you've heard of it and it just kind of flies by you and you're like, it's a pretty word. I don't know what it means. So let me explain. I'm going to take a sip of water first. One of the elements of the earth, water. Okay, so what the crystalline grid of the earth is. This is a grid, like an energy grid, right? Can you picture Minority Report or The Matrix or something, and they have these energy fields, and there's all these lines of energy, and it's creating whatever it's creating, whatever the computer output that it's creating. Kurt's putting up some kind of an energetic grid. And so it is an energy grid, the crystalline grid. And what it does is it receives divine energy, so energy from source, life force energy, God energy, and disperses it through the planet, through what would be the physical manifestation of the being of Gaia. And by the way, you're a part of that planet. You are made of the same elements as the tree, and you are not separate. Just because you can jump up in the air, gravity pulls you right back down, and that's one of those physical laws that is maintained in accordance with the divine energy that is received and then dispensed by the crystalline grid. And it receives it through this vortexual kind of energy, or a vortex energy. You know what a vortex is? It's this spinning. If you think about a whirlpool, that is a vortex, not just a kind. That is a vortex. So an energetic vortex, and this draws into it, but it also expresses. Again, we're back to that electromagnetic experience. Electric means to give out, and magnetic means to draw in. And so that is the vortex energy that actually distributes as the crystalline grid of the earth. So the crystalline grid both absorbs divine energy, or receives it, and then distributes it. Again, the electro and the magnetic. And the other thing that the crystalline grid does is that it is a kind of like Akash for the earth experience. Akash being like the ether, and the crystalline grid is an interdimensional energy, meaning an etheric kind of energy, an energy that is metaphysical, just above physicality, but as a part of it as well. So something that we don't experience in 3D, but it is a part of 3D. It actually composes 3D. And so it also absorbs and records all of the activity of the earth, all of its inhabitants, and just everything that happens. So absolutely everything, including everything that you do, think and behave and all of that is recorded in the crystalline grid. And so that's a part of the receiving. So not only does the crystalline grid, or not only does Gaia receive divine energy, she also receives what we give her. So think about it as she is the mother. Well, if you are a mother or a parent yourself, you're going to be giving your child energy, but your child will interpret and alchemize and transmute and recreate and express that energy. And as the parent, you receive it, you record it. And of course, you can off-gas it, and you could do all of the things, and that's the same thing. But the energy is there, still recorded in the crystalline grid. And so how this actually functions to be your literal mother is back to that vortex kind of energy that expresses the crystalline grid. The vortex cooperates with a vortex of divine. So as she receives divine energy, that's coming also from, let's say, another kind of vortex energy, because that's how energy will travel, essentially. So a source energy kind of vortex. But here's what's really cool is that back to that pre-birth experience, we actually get dispatched by an oversoul energy, and we hold counsel with our soul family and create our own little vortex of energy, which is what we think of as the soul, really. Our soul is a vortex of energy. So that vortex is an expression of source energy, and it communicates. It communicates with the vortex of the earth energy, or the crystalline grid vortex, and then that actually begins to create your physical reality. These two vortices come together and create this vacuum, and that becomes matter. And that is what I think we are getting into with science, with the God particle, or with the whole theory of Big Bang and it being antimatter and matter that collide. That's what it feels like to me. Only obviously from the metaphysical and the mystical standpoint. But I think that science, I think that quantum physics in particular, is actually beginning to put on paper, literally and metaphorically, what mystics have been experiencing for millennia. And so this is how she is literally your mother. And it doesn't just stop with that time when you are born and then your body is created. You continue to receive divine energy in the same way the crystalline grid does, and then communicate it to, you are basically a filter. It's your free will that allows the divine energy to flow through you. Communicate that to Gaia, who receives it in the crystalline grid, and then disperses it. And how you receive that back as a creation is all in accordance with your free will as well. And so this is what brings us into the idea of being in alignment. We both want to be in alignment and allowance of the divine energy flowing to us, and then allowing that to flow through us to communicate it to the crystalline grid, and then allowing the crystalline grid to communicate back to us, and that will become our reality. And so how is that done? Well, alignment is all about your vibration, about being in resonance with what you truly are. And the way that we do that is simply by our feeling state, our total state. The way that we feel our vibration is in every single absolute present moment of feeling positive, excited, joyful, anything that is along the lines of unconditional, meaning like non-resistant. When we feel resistance, we don't just evade it, we don't just like ignore it. We can see it as one of those aspects that we are pulling out of the closet and saying, oh, what's that wants to be alchemized? It's an opportunity when we feel that resistance. But if we try to run away from it, then we will be stopping our growth. Feel the resistance, and you can just become neutral about it and observe it. And that will give you the key to be able to alchemize it and expand it. So there's a distinction between just avoiding it and turning your attention fully to it and recognizing that you are the master of it as the experiencer or as the being. And so being in alignment with that crystalline grid and the mechanism of it being a vortex is what will actually facilitate things coming into your reality. And it is your total consciousness that allows this manifestation process, allowing the mother to give you the energy that will show up as your reality. And your showing up as your physical reality is more than just having a car. It's also having relationships. It's also having thoughts and events, all of the things that show up as some kind of form from matter to pre-matter, energetic. So your total consciousness is what allows your creation. And so this is the whole journey, is to open that closet and pull those things out one by one. And then in every single moment to be able to find positive or neutral energy and to move and act upon that energy. To be able to be in that alignment or resonance. And you can do that no matter what you've taken out of that closet and fixed. You don't have, that closet doesn't have to be completely cleared out before you create the reality that has you feeling in alignment and excitement and joy in every moment, really and truly. And so being able to give yourself permission to be in resonance, which means feeling good. You know that when you are in alignment with your higher self, or when you are resonating, which means to have the same energy as, it is a state of feeling positive and good, inspired, joy and excitement kind of feeling. And it actually, in that state, will facilitate your total creative potential. And so I had this dream, an astral dream the other night, by the way, that really illustrated this point to me. So what I mean by an astral dream, it means that it's like kind of like an out-of-body experience or an astral projection, meaning that I was identified with my astral body more than my physical body. So my consciousness had very little attachment, very thin tether to my physical body. And so it was, again, if you have an idea of what an out-of-body experience it is that's what this was. It happened from my dream state. It's an easy way for us to have those experiences because we're in allowance in that dream state, where our physical body isn't so dominant when we're in the sleep state, right? So in this astral dream, I actually died. I was actually, the whole dream before doesn't really matter as it concerns this discussion, but, I was on a bus. I was not the driver, and the driver drove off a cliff, and we went into water, like the ocean or the sea of some kind, and we were dying. And in the dream, or the astral experience, I just came I was very present. And I didn't have any fear because I stayed very present. It was really interesting that you can actually, something that was demonstrated to me was that you can be present and aligned even in the moment of something that we consider to be the devastation of all devastations, which is death. And so in that moment, one of the first things I thought was, well, this is a very special moment. I only get one death in each life. So this is pretty special. This is more special than any birthday because you get many of those. This is as special as being born. And I did experience my loved ones, but I didn't feel resistance to it. I just stayed present and kind of, again, stayed neutral and a little bit excited about the fact that this was a time to honor a very special moment. And so in that moment, feeling what I'm illustrating here is that I actually stayed aligned, or I stayed in resonance because I didn't feel any resistance to it. But what did show up for me, and I just simply asked Spirit, asked the universe, asked my spirit guides, I would really like to not experience the emotional pain of panic, of trying to get out of here if that isn't something that is possible, if this is truly my death. I want to not panic about it because that's emotional pain. And I'd also really like to not experience the physical pain. I don't want to breathe in that water. That's going to hurt real bad. I know that's going to happen if that's what's happening, but I'd really like to not experience that. And so I started to power down. And what it felt like was like a computer program just shutting down, and it was going all through my consciousness, but even my body, and it was going down, down, down. And then it was like right before, when it got to what maybe metaphorically, let's say, was 1%, got to 1%, it started to power up, and I was in my bed. And I was actually really surprised that I was in my bed. I thought that I was going to be, I guess what we say, on the other side or something. I didn't think that I was alive anymore. And I wasn't scared. This was not a fearful dream at all. I didn't wake up in a panic. I didn't even wake up stimulated. I just woke up a little bit like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't die. That's weird. I thought that it was over. And so when I first started asking about that, I was like, oh, how did I do that? How did I get to choose that I don't get to experience panic, emotional and physical pain at the time of my death? And Spirit told me, well, in the moment that you were asking for that, you were in alignment. And the very fact that you had the idea, or you were able to conceive of the question the request, was its certainty that it would unfold. Because in alignment, all of your thoughts, ideas, questions, requests are directly from divine energy, right? Directly from your soul. And when you're in alignment, then it will manifest because you're in alignment with, your mother as well, the Gaia grid. And so when you're in alignment, this is how in the Bible, or how Jesus said, ask and you shall receive. He meant that literally. When you're in alignment, when you ask, you will receive, because that's just step one of the creative process. And what this is very much like is the process of conception, conceiving a baby. Let's take me. The moment of my conception is just as much a part of, because it was aligned for me to become a physical human, conception was the certainty that it would happen. It was the first step of the certainty that it would happen. And so everything was present. There was all this intention that had set up around it, which was, there was the presence of the biological materials. There was the intentions that had happened before that experience of creating life, myself as well as my parents. And whether conscious or unconscious, because there are accidents supposedly, but it was still, there were all these intentions that led up to it. And because it was an aligned experience, conception is like having the idea, having the request. Even the fact that you could think of asking for something when you're in alignment is the certainty that it will happen because of the alignment. So, how do we do this? What's the takeaway? What are some techniques I'd love to give you to be able to have this alignment process continue? Well, in absolutely every single moment, we can find alignment by, maybe you want to say, channeling the experience of resonance. And how we do that is we disconnect from the conditions. We get into that absolute beingness. For me, this can really show up as the state of prayer, a living prayer. If you're someone who maybe came from the church like I did and came up with other people telling you what prayer is, I would encourage you to learn how to redeem the word, or if not the word, then the experience of prayer. Prayer is akin to the electric expression of the electromagnetic field. The magnetic expression being like the meditation, receiving. And prayer is connecting, like Gaia, with divine energy and then distributing it. And so prayer is actually you behaving in alignment, in accordance, and in absolute behavior with that crystalline grid. It's you being the crystalline grid. So you first receive the divine energy with the feeling state, and then you express it. And so that expression can be in words, it can be walking around, it can be in just how it exudes from you, a living kind of prayer. And then the way that we kind of are able to be more in that unconditional state or that living prayer, some maintenance we can do is being able to work with our vibration, work with our total consciousness, of which, like that mind complex, most of it is your subconscious mind. That is actually the one that is the mother aspect of your total mind. Your conscious mind is more of the father aspect, or the masculine. And so working with the mother aspect, the subconscious mind, is how we actually impress upon the field that which we will create. And so our meditation in the morning, our meditation before bed, because when we have a thought that comes into the conscious mind, something that we want to create, in order to bypass, we want it to bypass the critical mind and drop down into the subconscious mind, because that's how things actually manifest then. That's where the impression onto the field happens from that subconscious mind. About 80% of what you are, of what your consciousness is. In the conscious mind, those thoughts or message units that we either create or receive, they only last there about an hour and a half, and then they become distorted the longer that they are there. And in the critical mind, when it drops down into the critical part of the mind, it can stay there up to 24 hours, becomes even more distorted before it drops down into the subconscious mind. So we want that more fluid expression down into the subconscious mind in the most pure form of what it is that we want to intend or create upon the field. So I'm kind of going over this really quickly, but I can refer you to also Neville Goddard speaks about the working with the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, and how the conscious mind and the subconscious mind relate to one another. But I will tell you that the way that we can easily, when we have something, a thought or a message unit that is in the conscious mind moving down into that critical mind, that it will only drop down into the subconscious mind when we are able to bypass the critical mind, drop it past that, and that happens through sleep and meditation or hypnosis as well. Essentially, that's when we're able to step aside of that conscious and critical mind, and then the subconscious mind can do what she will do. So we have our prayer, which is a walking kind of meditation, an active alignment, aligning expression. It's behaving like the crystalline grid. It's aligning with Gaia. We have our meditation and our prayer before bed, because that will take all of those message units that are hanging out in our conscious mind, and we will take it into sleep. It'll drop down in there, and that's a very creative time. And then we have our morning meditation. And then when we do that, we will be, along those practices, we will then be able to have micro and mini experiences of alignment throughout the day, maybe even set a timer so that you can continue to raise your vibration and come into alignment in any moment, unconditionally, no matter what your life is like. And so the mother of all manifestation is you. It's how you allow divine energy to flow through you. And so, that is what I have for you today on this Mother's Day. I wish you all the love, all the luck, all the blessing in the world. I feel you, I know you, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you for connecting with this work. Thanks for tuning in. I love you, whoever you are. Hi everyone, it's Tricia Carr. If this is your first time connecting with my work, it's so nice to meet you. I'm a medium animal communicator. I have this podcast called Charmed Life with Tricia Carr. I love helping people connect with their own magic. I love helping people awaken to the multidimensional experience of the universe. I have an upcoming series of workshops, Journey with Your Multidimensional Spirit Guides. I will teach about the benevolent energies and guides that exist in our layered dimensional experience, and then lead everyone in a meditative journey to go into these realms and then meet the very beings who are on your spirit team. We have 3 different workshops. They all stand alone, but you could take one or you could take all 3. The higher cosmos, the star beings, the archangelic. We're going into the inner planes of the earth and Mother Gaia, nature spirits, elementals. Yes, I'm talking about fairies. And we're even going to talk about unicorns and dragons. The manifesting plane and the heart and soul. Parallel selves, future selves, timeline work, telepathy, you guys, we're going deep. Journey with Your Multidimensional Spirit Guides are all live streamed workshops, so you can join from anywhere. You can also join in person here in Los Angeles. Space is limited for the local attendees. Every workshop is interactive and we'll have question and answer sessions. When we come together in this way, we just expand so much. You can find in the post below the link to read all about it, including the class agenda and a way to register your spot. I'll see you guys soon.